Bounty hunters get priority seating at Muds. The most fascinating creature on Perseoff 9 is the venomous tremble lizard, and the USS Vancouver must find Dr. Beverly Crusher. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 4, Episode 9, The Inner Fight, written by Mike McMahon, directed by Brandon Williams, and what a coincidence, what a delight. We have director Brandon Williams here. How are you, Brandon?
Woo! Lower Decks. No, doing great. I've been super excited to talk about this episode, and really thanks for having me on back again to talk about what felt like we were building up to this whole, these last two episodes, not only in the season, but also coming on and talking about 3 and 4. I was just like, I could feel it, or 3 and 6.
Well, we really appreciate you coming back, Brandon. We got to slip that in. It's been amazing having you come in multiple times this season. Cirroc and I love you. We really appreciate you. Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you. It's fun to be here.
And a great season it's been so far. And I guess this is the big finale that we've been waiting for. Which left us on a cliffhanger. First time we've seen
first half.
First half of the finale.
Got that to be continued in there.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about all of this build up, and really, I guess this Nick Locarno character is where we find a lot of mystery being solved.
Let me jump in. Yeah. So everybody at home.
Yes.
Most people know who Nick Locarno is, maybe, but for those of you that don't, here is the savagery that is Lower Decks. Nick Locarno was in the episode First Duty, I believe, on Next Generation, somewhere around season 5, I think. And he was played by Robert Duncan McNeil. Then later on, let's see, did he come back? I think that was the only episode he was in. Later on, first episode of Star Trek Voyager comes along, and Janeway needs a pilot, the best pilot out there or whatever. And she's going to go have Nick Locarno out of the penal system and add him in. Trouble is writing situations and don't want to pay writers and whatever the stuff behind the scenes happens. So they got the exact same character and reskinned him as Tom Paris. So for all intents and purposes, Tom Paris is Nick Locarno and vice versa, but in universe, different characters. And so this was amazing that you guys could use Nick Locarno and have, obviously, Robert Duncan McNeil voice him. Just want to get all that out because, obviously, I, like other Star Trek fans, we were like, oh, my God, it's Nick Locarno. Finally, he's back. That's Tom Paris, kind of.
So a funny thing about that, too, is my wife loves Tom Paris. And I worked on the We'll Always Have Tom Paris. That was actually the first episode of Lower Decks I worked on.
One of my
it's coming around full circle, and she doesn't know because she avoids the spoilers, doesn't doesn't let me talk about it or anything like that. So I'm very excited for her to find out that technically it's kind of Tom Paris, sort of, but it's Nick Locarno. And what's really cool about that is that it's very exciting. Lower Decks uses all this lore and the Easter eggs, and we get to go through and look at all these episodes, but I'm always kind of being like, yeah, but Lower Decks brings something too, right? Lower Decks brings something to the table. And what is cool with this episode is it's kind of doing both, where we're using some of that lore, some of the Easter eggs, some of the referencing for the fans, but also taking it and doing something original and fun and building upon it, so that hopefully Lower Decks is really cementing its place as its own fun part of Star Trek, which is what I'm always kind of saying, yes, I love all the referencing, it's great, but this feels like acknowledging the world and building on the world rather than it just being another thing we're kind of sneaking in there, even though we do that plenty of times, although not so much on this one. This episode had a little bit less sneaking stuff in because we had so many big fun things to do.
There were a few, but yeah.
Yeah, they're in there. I mean, the outpost, right? Mud, first of all, right? Mud's
Harry Mudd.
outpost.
We also obviously
Yeah.
saw Gorn. We saw that, I don't remember the alien, what it was called, but it was in the Corbomite maneuver. That was the information guy that they went in and saw at Mudd's. Let me pull up a picture of him in the Corbomite maneuver. Everybody in the comments below, unless Brandon knows or Cirroc knows, what was this alien called? What was this guy? This little rascal.
Bill. No.
Probably Bill.
I don't remember the official name off the top of my head. Because in that episode, he's a puppet, but now we're kind of saying that, like, well, this is like an actual
person,
it's like the actual alien that the puppet in the episode was so like now we're getting in that we're like 3 layers deep into like a reference there, because it's like, well, this is in the show, it was literally a puppet that's also a puppet, but now it's a puppet that's like not, it's the actual alien race. So if you followed that, and that was actually a really big challenge, was getting it. There's 2 big things in this episode that were like, and I think I mentioned this before, but were like moments where like you have to trust that it's going to work in animation, but might not quite look right in the storyboard because we're a little bit more limited in storyboard. And it was the puppet, all of his stuff. It's like, just trust us. It's going to be funny when the lip sync is off. Cause we didn't have lip sync really. You don't do lip sync in boards or anything. And like, we would do all this like head maneuvering and whatnot, but I was like, just trust us. It'll look hilarious. And then the Mariner Cave stuff, which we can get to, like, was another one where it was like, it's going to come to life in a way that you can't even imagine right now in animation, but you kind of just have to try and like trust us. So that was a moment we had to do a lot of.
What was the complexity with the Mariner Cave stuff? Because it looked good. This is the cave stuff with the Klingon that she's fighting.
Yes, with Ma'ak, I think is how you actually say it. Ma'ak. Okay. He has the little thing in between, so technically it's like Ma'ak, something like that. If you're really into Klingon, it's one of those things. Any subtle moment in animation when you're storyboarding, you have to sort of, it's all in your composition and your staging and all that, because you can't quite do the like subtle little bits of animation that only the animators can, like subtle eye drifts and things like that. And that's such a like emotional and small, like it's just scene of talking, and like script was great. And what we got all our compositions where we needed it to be, but you're still kind of like, you're sitting, even if it's a strong composition, you're kind of sitting there for a few minutes while this like emotional read is being done. And thankfully we had like Tawny's audio in there, and she was like killing it with that scene. And all she has is her voice to really do this stuff. And all we have are like a handful of drawings to like get this big, what's Mariner all about thing. And it was just one of those things where I was like, yeah, well, once an animator gets in here and like really like breathes the true life into it, it's going to look amazing. And it's not going to feel like, oh, is this too long or is it slowing down? I was like, no, it's not. It's going to be great. And we all just had to kind of take a leap of faith on that and be like, it's going to be great. And it was great. And it is great. But that's just one of those how the sausage is made kind of things where you just kind of have to trust that it's going to taste great once you grill it, you know?
Yeah, just believe, just trust in it. It'll be great. Trust me, you'll like it. But I have a question. So where does the like, how does these ideas about bringing in these characters, because this is something that you obviously had decided like early on in the season with this Nick Locarno character. How do you just pull a random episode and say that's where we're gonna build on this storyline from this specific episode and expand on it? Like, how does the origin of that kind of evolution begin?
Well, I think, there is definitely a conversation that happens with Mike and some higher powers in the Star Trek universe, right? That they have some agendas that they're trying to like make sure they're making the best, that everyone is making the best possible version of Star Trek, and that they aren't like stepping on each other's toes, right? Because there's a couple shows going on and each show is doing stuff, and you don't want to like repeat ideas. So some conversation happens like well before and behind doors, like many layers of lead and steel, right? Doors.
It probably goes something like, what characters you're going to be using, what time frame, which aliens, and like, is it okay if we use Nick Locarno? Oh yeah, go. Who's Nick Locarno? Perfect, great. We're going to use him.
Well, and Lower Decks are like, we're like the champions of doing that, right? Like, let's take something that you probably don't know you care about and like make you care about it. I suspect that a lot of this stuff is like comes from Mike's love of Star Trek and grow in like watching it so much and knowing and being like, I wonder what happened to, that character, or, or just being clever about stuff. But some sort of conversation happens. And then they go and they do their writer's room, which is, I imagine they expand on it. And I'm sure that there's definitely an approval process and whatnot goes back and forth. By the time it gets to me, most things are approved. But sometimes we're dealing with stuff that we're not sure if we're going to be able to do it or not, or especially when you have legacy characters. But we were solid on Nick Locarno because we knew that Robert Duncan McNeil was in, he was down. And actually, I think for a little while they had to be like, he was like, yeah, I'm like so excited to be back in Lord. And everyone's like, shh. I think at some point it was like, he didn't realize it because he was like, well, I'm just going to come back. And like, I don't think they told him exactly, right? Like, you have to kind of keep it secret. But so he, he was really on board. So we knew it was going to come together really well. But like, yeah, I'm sure that there are just these layers of conversation that happen. But by the time I get to it, we're pretty confident that we're going to be able to do it and do all the things, but we still have to sort of make it work, right? Because we still have to, like, once we get into storyboarding this stuff, sometimes you see ideas that don't work. Sometimes you're like, oh, actually, this idea works better than we imagined. Like, let's focus a little more. Let's make this scene a little bigger. We'll make another scene a little smaller. Like, things get moved around. Like, you can get the best script ever, but once you start putting, the compositions in and the acting in, you start to go, oh, actually, I actually kind of like this scene over here more. It's like, let's cut down from here and let's put it over here and let's move this around. And that's kind of like how you end up. And with a big episode like this, that's basically a movie. Like, I was excited about it from the start, but rewatching it to come on in and talk with you guys, I was like, this is a movie. Like, we're doing a movie in 22 minutes or a little extra. And we even had we were like letting moments breathe. There's like 2 transitions where we're just looking at environments, and like that stuff's so hard to do because that's the first thing on the chopping block when you need time, right? It's like, oh, your fancy cinematography, cut. Like, we don't have time for that. And like this one, we just let everything happen, and that's usually the right choice. But for this episode, we let it all happen, and like we have all these locations, and every moment felt like big and fun. From the outpost in the beginning, which I don't know if you all noticed, but like there's a little bit of a running gag with Mariner like hates outpost scientists.
Oh yeah, she's got a problem with those guys, especially these guys.
And I think that's sort of an in-world joke of like, why are there outpost scientists when you could be in Starfleet and like get to go and study this? But I also sort of like it that some people are like, no, we're gonna go outside the system.
Well, Brandon,
we're going to specialize on this particular species of something, and we're going to,
an academic romance with the Trimble lizards. I love that line so much.
I wanted to ask you about locations, actually.
Wild creatures. That was a hilarious line too. But sorry, Brian.
Not at all. You did use caves as one of your locations. Last week's entire episode was entitled Caves, and it was about caves. I couldn't help but wonder, but didn't have time to go back and like check every little bit. I'm sure I will at some point because I'm a big dork. But did you reuse any of the cave storyboards or drawings or sets from episode 8? Because the whole running gag about episode 8 was all these caves look the same and this and that. And I was like, I wonder if they reused any of that or if it was just all fresh because they're different teams and they don't really have time to switch back and forth.
Well, one part which is funny about caves is they didn't actually reuse a lot within that episode. Funny enough, like for it being like the joke being, right, like, oh, in Star Trek, you end up in these caves, right? Because it's a way, it's a practicality of making a sci-fi show. And so we're making this joke about it, but they actually weren't able to, they didn't reuse as much as you'd think. Like if you go through the caves episode, they sort of had to do different caves each time. I was determined to like, we sort of like reading, 409, we sort of had I knew this was a big important episode, and I was like, I'm not reusing anything if I can get away with it. I want everything to be like fresh and new, and I'm just going to put everyone through hell because I feel like this episode is probably worth it. So there's definitely reuse. I mean, the Outpost is a reuse, right, from 303.
Really?
Which also has a cave in it. Before we did caves, so I wonder if they used any of those. Maybe they used some of those caves. But yeah, I was determined to like, we can do as much stuff, like let's do everything we can. So I tried my best to be a pain in everyone's butt and like make everyone draw everything. It was my chance.
I have a two-part question for you, Brandon. This is an episode, and one of the few, if I'm not mistaken, that kind of takes a real serious approach at trying to deal with mental health. And something that we've talked about on this podcast a lot. It's something that is a recurring theme in Star Trek in general, as being one of the things that technology and science hasn't fully been able to heal and deal with. So everybody is kind of going through their resolution of mental health issues in different ways on Star Trek. And in this particular one, we see Mariner going through it in her way, dealing with it in her way, by putting herself in these very risky and dangerous situations and kind of flying off flippantly more than usual. But so the question is, the sensitivity with dealing with mental health as an issue on this show. And also the second part of that is, were there any of scenes that we did not see that did not end up in the final cut in regards to that issue?
I think, well, to your first question, we all sort of looked at it and be like, okay, everyone knew right away, like you read that script and you're like, okay, we're kind of dealing with something important going on with Mariner that also feels so connected to everything we've seen her do this entire time. I mean, she was introduced as this rebel, right? And she's always sort of covered it up by being like, yeah, but Starfleet, people fall through the cracks of Starfleet. And that's sort of like the critique of that system, and a good one. But I think like deep down, really, we find out that actually, maybe the motivation is a little bit more personal, right? Like what she's dealing with. So we knew, again, like everything about that cave sequence where she opens up and explains that she had a relationship with Sito, who is in the episode Lower Decks of TNG, right? And she volunteers for
season
the spy
7,
mission.
One of the best episodes of all time.
Yes.
Really, really very memorable one. And so many people love that character and she was also, wait, am I getting confused? Because she was in 2 episodes. She was also in First
Locarno
Duty,
episode,
which was with Nicholas Locarno. So she originally screwed up with the team with Wesley Crusher, with Nick Locarno. And then she came back late. That was in season 5-ish, came back in season 7 on the Enterprise, and, had that very powerful scene that everybody loves, everybody remembers. She's one of the most beloved 2-episode characters ever. Anyway, I just wanted to jump that in because I'm included in that group that loves her.
Well, it's kind of a good metaphor too for what's going on, is like second chances are important, right? And making mistakes, everyone makes mistakes, and like coming back from that. And I think that kind of like is a part of the whole mental health conversation a little bit, because I sometimes feel like we don't give people the same space to make mistakes that are like emotional, versus like when you make a big, like I think we've come to a place where we tend to be a little bit better about like, oh, if you do something that's like bigger and more destructive, physically or whatnot, we kind of have like some understanding around that, or we're starting to. Obviously, improvement in all things is possible, but like with mental health, it can be a little harder to have that space to like make a mistake and come back from it. And I think that is a big part of, what's going on with Mariner and how we approached the episode. And it was a challenging and scary. To me, I was reading that and I was like, oh no, like, is this, like this feels like the end of Mariner's arc. But I think once we got in and started boarding it, I was like, no, this is the beginning, really, because she's just now becoming who she needs to be, right? And like, I think what I hope happens is that we continue to make the show and we get to explore that, like, just because she had this realization and maybe like comes to some self-acceptance, like it's not like all your problems are solved, right? Like these issues, especially with mental health and like the way that narrative works in entertainment, is you sort of want to like defeat the bad guy or bad person or whatever, or like element, and then celebrate victory. But like, I think especially with mental health, it's a kind of an ongoing battle, and there's not just one realization, there's not just one treatment. And hopefully we can continue to explore that with, Mariner or other characters, because they all have their pressures and their past. Tendi has a past, right, that she's dealing with. So, and to some extent, what's going on with T'Lyn, she's this emotional Vulcan.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of space for all of the characters to kind of have this journey. And I hope that we get to sort of show that there's not just one end to any of those journeys, and that it is a continual process. And then hopefully we can shoot phasers and stuff along the way and fight in caves.
Hey, Brandon, you actually mentioned cinematography earlier, and I kind of wanted to jump back on that because there was one shot that was really cool, had to be planned out, and some people may have been giddy over it because it was great. It was when Mariner was fighting the Klingon, and she does like a karate kick to the guy, like a jump kick, and a bolt of lightning strikes at the same time. There's kind of like this little freeze shot. I was kind of wondering, like, what kind of conversations do you have when you are, thinking about what kind of shots you want, or something that makes it look like a movie, something that makes it look epic and more than just like a 22-minute animated show? Or is it just storyboard artist comes up with these things and you're like, oh, that's great, we're going to use that? Or what's that about? How does that work?
It's a little bit of all of the above, because usually like lighting, like you called out that lighting, that's cool, because that is usually, you don't have time or resources to do really a lot of cool lighting stuff, right? So when you get a chance to, that's like the best way to bring like production value, I guess, right, to a scene, is to have a lighting effect. I think back to the Mugatu episode in was that season 2, when Mariner is biting Shax, right? And there's a big lighting effect. And so you kind of go, okay, like you choose your moments. So that's one way of doing it. Both fights in this episode, like we have 2 big Mariner fights, one where she's fighting Mach, and the other one where she's fighting the Romulan, went through several iterations, because as my job as a director, I have to sort of cast my storyboard artists into these different scenes. And I had an action guy, right? Because some people are just like action people. They want to come in, they want to do action. I had an action guy, so I gave him those action sequences, and he does that first pass that's like, oh, I get to do all this action stuff that I love to do. And then he's got to kind of move on to other sequences, and then we get to start building on the work that he's done. And then you get into really specific things like, I love this one kind of kick or something from an anime or an action movie, but you don't want to do it exactly. So you're like, how do I be in conversation with that, right? Like a lot of times with action, because I'm sort of an action person myself, although I've become more as directing on Lower Decks, it's pushed me to care more about story and character emotions. But when an action scene comes up, you're like, oh, how do I get into conversation with the Raid Redemption, if you've ever seen that movie, and all the awesome action in that movie, or an anime, or Naruto. I'm always trying to sneak Naruto stuff in, and So you get an action scene, it's kind of your chance,
Like
and everyone kind
run.
of gets, yeah, everyone kind of gets their chance to like put a little bit of themselves into it. And I think there is one bit where Mock does a full-on like WWE style like takedown of Mariner, and that was Dante, our AD. Like I guarantee you that was like his like wrestling dream to like put that in there because it was so specific and it didn't get in until like way later, or uh and so yeah, like everyone sort of like gets their little chance to be like, oh, this is like my action scene. I'm gonna reference this thing and like try and go beyond it or whatever. And then you get pulled back a little bit, right? Because you're like, all right, guys, this was great, but there's a story, so we're gonna cut half of this out.
Yeah, this isn't the WWF.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it could be.
so yeah,
But it could
so
be.
yeah, so like I said, it's planning, it's excitement. Like hopefully you feel the energy of both the animators and like what we try and do as a storyboard artist to like set it up. Lighting tends to add that, and then it's just that specificity. Like if you go through and you look at them and like, do you see specific moves? Like that means that that artist was probably excited about like the wrestling move, like they were excited about that, or they were interested in this kung fu movie or not, So that's kind of how action scenes come together for sure.
Mhm.
It's your moment and you take it.
Brandon, I don't have as much knowledge as you or Ryan about the universe of all of the the shows and the backstory, but my limited knowledge, gets activated by what I can relate to and what I have as a reference point. So the bounty hunter that Billups was playing in this episode, I thought when I first saw it that it might have been like a Breen type character or something, because the sound effects of the communication sounded Breenish to me. But what was the inspiration for that particular character? Is that something we've seen in the past? And the other character that I thought was well done and jumped out to me as a standout was the bouncer that was asking if they were on the list or not. That alien as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what went into those characters?
Think like a little bit I think it's a little bit Mandalorian, to be honest.
Yes, that's another feel to it too. Yes.
Yeah, because it's like you're doing sci-fi, you sort of want to always take your shot to do like a fun because like bounty hunters are such a thing in all sci-fi, whether it's Star Trek,
Yeah.
Star Wars,
Totally.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of get your chance to do a bounty hunter, and then like what do we do with our bounty hunter?
Yeah.
One thing I will note too that was really cool is the actual skull being like a hologram type thing. That was like something design added later. Like, so that was a nice surprise for me. And I was like, oh, really? That was really cool.
Yeah.
But I think the entire, like what I actually referenced a little bit for the whole bounty hunter thing is Star Trek V, the Final Frontier, right? Because there's the whole village that they go to, and right, because like Spock's brother has like his following and they have to go kind of attack the desert, and so like you might think, oh, they're doing Star Warsy stuff, and it's like, well, actually we're still in conversation with Star Trek, because we're looking at I was looking at Star Trek V for a lot of that. I think the bouncer thing was just a fun, I mean, that alien has I don't remember exactly what that alien's called. He's shown up before. You can kind of like point them out.
Really?
But I think that's Mike just having fun with being like with that type of scene. Like they show up and they're in full uniform, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Man, Starfleet, like what are you doing here?" And I was like laughing every time at that line. I would just laugh so hard. I was just like, yeah, they are just in uniform. Like what is free? Because like I like even though I know the script and you know where everything's going, like sometimes when you're in the moment, like you kind of forget. You're like, what is Freeman thinking here? And it's like, oh, this is part of her whole plan, right? To like to sort of string you along and be like, oh, this is going to be like Lower Decks. They're being silly or whatever, but really like Freeman is kind of like masterminding that whole sequence. So I think is sci-fi bounty hunter, and like I think you can't escape like Mandalorian being in like the ether of everyone's mind, but like we try to keep it like Star Trek for sure. And in terms of like the design, we just went with like cool design and cool helmet, because it's like it's a chance to do a cool helmet. And then like Billups takes it off. And he's like, do you know how hard it is to like not sweat in there? And I was just like laughing so hard at that. Cause I'm like, you know what? I bet you that's a reality of anyone in any sort of helmet or face makeup is like, that's gotta sweat and be terrible.
Totally. Well, Brandon, we got to run, or we know you got to run in just a second here. Very quickly, thank you for mentioning Star Trek V, the greatest Star Trek movie ever, nobody would say, probably. But on your way out, before you go, very quickly, did I see the outrageous Okana in Muds? It sure felt like I saw him or someone that looked exactly like him when they were getting booed and they left.
I think you did. We didn't do that in boards, but I think that was a nice little treat that was added in after the fact. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. Oh.
There it is.
It's gotta be, right?
I mean,
it's convincing to me.
That was just, I saw that. I was like, wait a second. They're like, that outrageous Okana, he's a rascal. He's everywhere. Sometimes you see him, sometimes you think you see him.
Everyone gets their chance, right? Like everyone is trying their chance to put a little something in. So like if boards doesn't do it, design, they're going to take their shot. Or sometimes even like, Barry or Mike or someone up there will be like, hey, like this background character, like maybe we can pull this fun, everyone is kind of trying to like put their little stamp on the show and have that fun and to put those things in there for you to find. Well, for sure. I just like the Rutherford. Hey, there's a lizard smoking green, liquid over there. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Brandon, we really appreciate you jumping on again. This is going to be the last time we're going to see you for the 4th season, but we really hope to see you back in the 5th season, the show and you yourself. It's been a great time. Great. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandon.
And everybody at home, stick around. We've got more for you on the 7th Rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Here are the trivioids of the week. They go a little something like this. The most fascinating creature on Perseoff 9 is the venomous Tremble lizard. Mariner's cavalier behavior has grown increasingly dangerous since the mission to Ferenginar. The USS Vancouver must find Dr. Crusher. Repairing an old-ass weather satellite doesn't seem very dangerous to Beckett Mariner. The people of New Axton don't smooch Federation, but Boimler's adrenaline wore off 2 panic attacks ago. Bounty hunters get priority seating at Muds, and Mariner hugs a Klingon. All right. Yeah. So, boy, we got a lot going on here. First thing, Captain Cosmia, that was the Orion girl that she's like an Orion captain that was gonna do whatever to Mariner, and Tendi comes and saves her. Have we met Captain Cosmia before? I guess that may have been a good question for Brandon. I don't remember because Tendi recognized her, but I don't remember her.
Well, we did have that Orion Homeworld episode. She might have been in there.
Yeah.
But she was cute. I thought she was cute.
Yeah, and I don't remember either. I thought about that too. I was like, maybe she was in the Orion Homeworld, but I don't know, maybe not. And I do think we saw Okana there. Not sure. They mentioned the Jem'Hadar. Let me tell you a little bit more about Tito Jaxa.
Tito Jackson? I know that, Tito. He played with the Jackson.
Yeah, he was the Jackson 4th. He was number 4.
Yeah.
No, but Tito Jaxa, very beloved character, played by an actress that I don't remember her name, but I don't think she did too much, not a ton. And great storyline. It was a Wesley Crusher episode in the 5th season, I believe 5th season, maybe 4th, called The First Duty. And that was when they introduced Nicholas Locarno and one other character. I don't remember, not important. And then later on in season 7, they had the episode called Lower Decks. Actually, Next Generation Lower Decks, one of the best episodes ever, one of my favorites, certainly. And Cedo Jaxa is backsa. She's back, and there are other lower deck characters. It almost seems like that was an episode that this whole show is based off of, because it was about the lower decks. But anyway, she had a really good, important story arc, and she was kind of like Worf's pupil. He was like mentoring her, and she was a Bajoran. It was a really cute mentor relationship there. Anyway, so that's Cedo. So when Mariner mentions her, all of us that have seen the episode are like, "Ah, Cedo, we miss her too, Mariner. She was amazing." And that was really good stuff.
That's what was bothering her. Okay. Yeah. Jean Hajar is the other one that you were thinking of from the Nick Letourneau, Cedo Jax.
Oh, okay,
Jean
got it.
Hajar.
Was it season 5? Does it say season 5 on there? I think so.
Let's see. Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't say.
What episode, yeah.
It was also really cool to see, to hear Mariner and the Klingon talking about all the things that happened in Deep Space Nine, like about the Jem'Hadar and the massacres and battling like that. It was really cool because we know what they're talking about. They're talking about the Dominion Wars, you know?
Yeah. And I thought that was a nice thing. It was funny because they brought back all of the people that we had seen kind of get abducted throughout the season. So we saw the Bynars, we saw the Orions, the Romulans.
Yes.
So it was good to see them all together, the Ferengi, all together in the same episode at the same time. That was another question I kind of had for Brandon was the difficulty of managing so many people in the cast, because this was a larger kind of extensive cast, probably the biggest they've had so far. And I wondered what that was like. Also wondered if this particular episode had a larger budget, being a season finale type episode, if the budget was bigger than the other episodes, because it seemed like there were a lot of things going on. There was a complete A and B storyline that had its own identity, and there were a lot of locations, with Freeman and her crew on one location, and Tindy and Boimler and all in another location. So there was a lot of, I guess, set designing going on. So I wondered if there was a bigger budget for this episode.
Yeah, well, it's obviously like a 2-part finale, and yeah, I wonder if these last 2 episodes have like that higher budget. I'm assuming Mike McMahon also wrote episode 10. I don't know yet. We don't know yet, but we know that he wrote this one. So maybe he wrote, just 9 and 10 together, and he was just like, "Hey, I'm the showrunner. I get more money for my episodes, buddy," or something like that. But you're right. It does, there was a way bigger cast. I loved that crew of Orions, the Bynars. Very good point about the Bynars. Cardassians, Romulans. There was a Klingon there, some Ferengi. It's like the whole, bringing them all back. That was, I loved it.
I also love the way T'Lyn delivers lines. There was a moment when Mariner says, "I would have kicked his ass," or something like that. And she says, "I have no doubt you would have tried."
Yes. Yeah, she's a little rascal, that one. Hey, I looked up real quick. The First Duty, just to make sure. Yeah, it was season 5, episode 19. Check this out. They're on Starfleet Academy, which is where it happens when Wesley Crusher's at Starfleet Academy. And here's a cool little scene when they're walking through there. And I know you recognize this. This is you and I and Melissa have been here, and a bunch of others. It is Starfleet Academy, but it's actually located in Van Nuys, California, at the Japanese Gardens. It's beautiful.
So this is the first time I've actually seen. I'm glad you got this image up, because Picard is wearing the traditional Picard captain's uniform that he wears.
Yeah, with
the asymmetrical red front design, and Wesley is wearing the one that I'm used to seeing on DS9, which is the red just on the top, panel of that uniform. So is there a reason why there's a distinction between these two in this episode? Do you know? or in general, why there's a distinction?
I would say, because if you look at the people behind him are also wearing the same thing as Wesley, I would say that this is probably Starfleet Academy, that they're just everybody at Starfleet. I believe when Nog was a cadet, he also had a very similar outfit, but it wasn't, the black part was like a grayish, but it had the same shoulder thing. So I don't know if it's because of that or if it's because that was right around when Deep Space Nine was starting. Yeah, well, this is mid 1992. Deep Space Nine started in 93, so maybe that's just kind of that new design they were going for, and that was what they wore in Voyager 2, if I remember correctly. So, their outfits are always changing. I mean, you look at every single series, they have a different uniform, so I think really what it boils down to is just outside of the universe, it's just they just keep changing things. It's kind of like, basketball jerseys. They know that if they just keep making different variations, the Warriors or the Lakers or the Knicks, they come up with all these different thousands of different variations. Whereas back in the day, there was one version or maybe two, home and away. And now they've got a million because they're like more things to buy. I wonder if they do that for cosplayers too. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty there's intricate designs. And even speaking of the costumes, I noticed the uniforms of the lower deckers in this episode too, because of the way the shot was filmed. 4 lower deckers were in the background, Mariner was in the foreground, and I was noticing how her uniform was moving as she walked, and how it moved when her shoulders and hands were moving. The crease in the white ridge of trim across the top was also moving with her body. And I just thought about how much detail has to go into animation to make the clothes also move, to make like Brandon was talking about, the facial expressions, the eyebrows, the eyes, and what kind of emotions are being transmitted by the pictures that you see. So it's a lot of technical and skillful drawing that goes into that.
Yeah. We also had a glass storm today, which is new, or as Mariner called it, stupid knife rain. I mean, that's
yeah.
Like that's definitely a new one. I don't think we've heard that in the Star Trek universe yet. Have you ever been to the I was going to say, have you ever been to the Pickpockets district of anything?
Pickpockets district. That reminds me of Rutherford's line when he says, "We have pockets. The uniform, it has pockets." So that answers one question, at least in the lower deck.
Yeah, well, because they said they're like, we're going to the Pickpockets district, and I'm like, why would anybody go to the pickpocket? It's like, what is there, like also mugging alley that we could walk down? Or step in gum store?
Yeah, there's plenty of pickpockets districts. Unfortunately, nowadays it's kind of an increasing thing. I like that when the Klingon that was with Mariner in the cave, his name was Ma'ak.
Yeah, Mahak, I think.
Ma'ak, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we know what kind of turtlenecks he likes. But I liked when he said,
got it. I had to put that together. I was like, shoot, I need to be faster. What am I missing here? I got you now. Okay. Very good.
So I like when he said to Mariner, "You wage war on yourself." Thought it was a great line, and it sounded very like this is, Klingon talk. And then I also like when Mariner said, and I thought this was one of the funniest lines in the episode to me, when she kind of makes everyone go to sleep. She's like, "You know what? Let's just do it tomorrow." She's like, when everybody's not being a dick. And I was like, and then she goes to sleep, and everyone goes to sleep. It's like,
that was easy.
Go to sleep.
They're like, "Oh, okay," and they just
okay.
I was like, man, I don't go to sleep when people tell me to, but they knew not to mess with her, I guess. I will say about Mahak, that Klingon, though, is we know what his favorite hairstyle is, and bird. But
What?
mohawk.
Oh,
So, but something cool about the Klingon was that he had pink blood. Did you notice they showed his blood was pink? And that is something that goes all the way back to the original series, I believe. Like Vulcans have green blood. I think Romulans too. And Klingons have pink blood. And, that's just some funny little thing that they did back in the day and stuck with it. So it was cool to see the pink blood, because I actually stopped and went back. I was like, wait, does he have pink blood? Yep, he sure does. So good knowledge there on the lower deckers.
Wow, I didn't know that they have pink blood. You would have stumped me on that question right there. It's funny because they're the most like alpha masculine people in the Star Trek world, and
yeah, they actually sneeze glitter too while we're at it.
Yeah,
a warrior sneeze.
Yeah. I like the specialist scientist that was in the opening act of this episode when he says, "Yes, back to respecting these noble creatures." That had me rolling. That whole scene, the whole opening, seemed like it was just a troll on Jurassic Park to me. It seemed like right?
Totally.
Didn't it feel like a Jurassic Park troll?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I liked it. What was the name? Because there was a list of names that they had to go through to Starfleet was trying to get in contact, right? I saw 7 of 9.
Yeah.
But I didn't get the other.
There was 7 of 9. Beverly Crusher, who the whatever ship is assigned to.
Was it the No.
It was the USS Vancouver was assigned to that one.
Okay.
Because Boimler was like, "Oh, can I do Beverly Crusher? We get to," and they said, "No, that's USS Vancouver." And then later on, he was sleeping. He's like, "Teach me how to tap dance, Beverly Crusher." That's also going to be in a future episode of Next Generation that we review. She's actually a really good tap dancer. Gates McFadden is. But so it was 7 of 9, Beverly Crusher, Thomas Riker, and the aforementioned Nick Locarno. Who's Thomas Riker, you ask? Well,
yes. Who is Thomas Riker?
He was introduced in the Next Generation. You actually did see him when Jonathan Frakes was on Deep Space Nine. He showed up and he was like pretending to be Riker, and then Kira was kind of liking him. And then he ended up pulling off his lamb chops and just had like a goatee, and he was really Thomas Riker. And then he kidnapped her or whatever. Kind of a mystery there. So those were the 4. That was a good group to mention.
So they're looking for Thomas Riker, not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's another thing I wanted to mention, and I can't find it now. But I will say what's cool about this. I don't remember if this is their first 2-part episode.
I'm not 100% sure, because I think one of the other finales does a 2-part, but I can't 100% say that for sure.
Yeah. So
no, I was going to ask you about, did you get the Breen kind of feeling too, or what was your kind of feeling on that Mandalorian type character? What was your feeling when you saw that?
I mean, I thought that it looked like a bounty hunter, that they were just kind of, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Return of the Jedi, when there's like the 6 bounty hunters, like bounty hunters in sci-fi are like the coolest, everybody's always like, ooh, it's a bounty hunter. This is it. And so Boba Fett was one. If I remember correctly, in that scene, there were 6 bounty hunters in Return of the Jedi. One was Forlom, which is for love of money. And then there are like 6 of them. I can't remember them all. But anyway, Boba Fett was said to be the best of them. And then that's what The Mandalorian was based off. So when they said bounty hunter, I just thought, ooh, another cool bounty hunter with the helmet, like Boba Fett or like The Mandalorian. But everybody in the comments below, let us know, in the long lore and history of bounty hunters, When you saw this one pop up, what did you think of? Did you think of anything? Did it remind you of anything? Did you think of that Return of the Jedi scene when we see all 6 of them? Can you name all 6 of those bounty hunters? That's one is IG-88. It's like a robot bounty hunter, IG-88.
Would the Breen be considered bounty hunters? I always thought they were like a kind of a bounty hunter.
I mean, they certainly look like them, but they're, and we don't know enough about them to know. I mean, every episode of Star Trek that they've ever appeared in, you've seen. So they're not in any other show or any other thing. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, so, so we don't really know, but they do feel bounty hunter-ish in that the Dominion were able to bring them in and hire them, and, and they were kind of like,
right. Or mercenary army type, but, like a bounty hunter, like that same category.
Hired guns.
Yeah.
I liked it when the Klingon said, "You want to solve puzzles and mysteries?" Like, all mockingly. But he says, "Your friend gave her life to protect that. She would not approve of your actions." Very good.
Yeah. I also like the whole park on the moon, and they had to take the moon shuttle back. It's just, I don't know where that came from, but it did remind me of when you have to park somewhere far away. You're like, seriously?
Moon shuttle, moon shuttle.
Moon shuttles. But they did get a little serious with this episode. I thought that Mariner's speech when she says, I didn't sign up for this, for Starfleet, to be fighting wars and all of that. And I thought there was just a little moment of just seriousness for this episode. It was, it gave, a little bit of levity to it. I mean, a little bit of heaviness to it.
I agree. And anybody that caught my Moon Shuttle sing-along and recognized it but didn't know what it's from, it's Moon Shadow by Cat Stevens. Beautiful song, great artist, great music there. But yeah, like this had some weight to it. We finally find out what's eating Mariner's grape, like Gilbert's grape or whatever, because that's been one of the themes of the whole season. That's one of the seasonal arcs, is what's bothering her. And now we finally know. As Brandon said, it's almost like the beginning of her arc, but it feels like it's kind of like, the end of the first phase of her arc and the beginning of the next phase of her arc. And, she's probably going to have many, kind of like, say, a lot of the characters in Strange New Worlds and Discovery. They're having not just seasonal arcs, but also series long arcs, and she's definitely having that, as are all of the lower deckers. If you'll notice, Boimler is kind of growing, Tendy's kind of growing, Rutherford's kind of growing. They certainly haven't reached where they can go, but we're seeing some growth, but especially from Mariner most of all, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I felt a little bit bad for her watching this, because I felt like now it became obvious that she doesn't have anybody that she confides in and talk to.
Good point.
Yeah, it felt like in the crossover episode when she became an actual person in Strange New Worlds, when she had that scene with
Uhura,
with Celia Rose Gooding. That was the moment I felt like she actually found somebody that she can open up to and talk to. And it felt like that she doesn't have that in her own, Cerritos, because it took this Klingon character to get it out of her, as opposed to any one of the people that she's been in the trenches with so far, namely Boimler and, Rutherford Tidwell.
That's a really good point. It makes me wonder what happened to Jennifer the Andorian. I don't remember if that was season 2 or season 3, but did she go off into another ship? Remind us in the comments below if you remember. There was a blue Andorian character named Jennifer, and they had become very close, Mariner and Jennifer. And so either she's gone on another ship or she's just not right now in the episodes, because that was the closest she had to somebody. Here she is right here. But yeah, it's true. Boimler kind of, but I don't know if she necessarily respects him enough or considers him a peer enough to confide in him or really anybody. They're like her party pals, but not like.
I thought Ransom, they were gearing Ransom up to be that guy because a couple episodes ago he's been like the one to initiate that, and because he has knowledge of her kind of being not herself. So I thought they were going to make him the guy that kind of tries to reach out and break that wall, but they made it this random Klingon that she just meets.
Sometimes that's easier, you see
that.
Yeah,
sometimes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because she said, we're going to die anyway. We're not going to see each other again. So who cares? I might as well just tell you. So that allows Mariner to confide in somebody without betraying the kind of character that she is. It would be weird if she just finally was like, all right, fine, Tendi, I'll tell you. But it was really cool that she did confide in the Klingon. But you're right about Ransom. I hadn't thought of that. He's kind of the closest to that.
He's the closest to being able to reach out to her, understand her, not be a parental figure where you kind of not listen to whatever your parents say anyways. Just somebody with a little bit of authority, a little bit somebody she thinks is a little repulsive, but still respects because he has done things to earn her respect. So I feel like he could technically reach her if he really put the effort forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're just about out of time here. I do want to say that when the away team was leaving that Mudd's establishment, I just thought it was funny that they're going like, boo, Starfleet sucks. I don't know why it made me laugh. Like, why are they heckling or booing them? I don't know. I listened to it 3 times. Sometimes it's the weirdest thing that makes you laugh, but that one worked on me.
The one that made me laugh too was I'm not a puppet. I don't know why I laughed so much on that, but it's just,
I'm your puppet. It's another song from like the 50s or something. I don't know who sings that one. Let us know in the comments below if you know who sings that puppet song. I'm your puppet. Remember that one?
You're the only one, but maybe somebody else out there knows.
Somebody does. I think Linda Anderegg knows. Linda Anderegg in the live chat. She's got it. She's got good music knowledge. So, who else has great music knowledge? Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan.
Arucan.
By the way, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, I know you're excited about the NBA season starting, so good luck to you, but not your team. He likes the Grizzlies. Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anna Post, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Goo, Dequeue. We've also got Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, our pal Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Allyson Leach-Heid, Julie Manisfee, Marcia Classic Schreier, Gregory K. Wickstrom, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, and Jason, the outrageous Okun. Maybe he was in this episode. All right, I think that's about it. Everybody at home, remember, you can listen to these episodes anytime, wherever you find your podcasts. Just look up the 7th rule and the number 2. Wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, whatever, the 7th rule 2, please be sure to subscribe, listen in, give it a 5-star rating, and of course, a nice review so that we can show our parents. Look. That's it. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you next time. Looking forward to the finale, the second half of the finale, more like. And see you next time on the 7th rule.